It is Fabulous Friday, the middle of, well, or on the backside, the downhill side of August already.
The days are getting shorter, and oh, I dread that when that happens. I do enjoy summer. I don't enjoy. Of course, summer hit us hard a couple days ago when we had fires start down the road. So now it's like crap. It's summer in the forest where you can't clean the forests, and and we have forest fires.
And you just said you've got embers now falling.
No, not embers. Ash started falling
Ash.
yesterday,
Oh,
and
okay.
when ash starts falling, that's when we know that embers are not far behind.
Right.
The difference between ash and embers is just the speed of the wind and the proximity of the fire. So we spent all day yesterday gushing our property with a 2-inch fire hose, just to get
That's a
everything
lot
kind
of
of.
water.
Yeah, we pumped. We probably pumped 5,000 gallons, and got everything. We're going to do that probably about every other day,
Yep.
and because the problem is if you do have embers, you don't need the tree to tree or the grass to grass exchange, for fire. If you do get the embers, boom, there's a fire in your yard, and now you're the scourge of the block because you didn't water your grass and it's not green. And my neighbors, especially my one to the south, who's in between me and the fire, his grass is as green as grass can get. So,
Oh, that's good. You've got a buffer then.
I have a great buffer there. So if my grass caught on fire, I would be the scourge of the neighborhood, and I can't have that.
Yeah.
Fire discussion
and
reminds me
it's
of my days.
wonderful we've got Don on tonight. Thank you for joining us, Don.
Yeah, I thought with the three of us, ought to be a blast, right?
Yeah, and Pat says, I'm glad we didn't post the Mo, Larry, and Curly, here. So.
I guess I'm curly by definition.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. No, that talk about the fire reminds me of my first time seeing a fire when I was in Southern Cal in like the early 90s. I remember I'd never seen a fire like that.
Yeah.
Took off out of John Wayne Airport and looked down, and the whole hillside was on fire. I'd never seen anything like it, like just in flames. And down there they have them the fall. I forget Santa Ana's they call it, where the wind blows and it blows like 80 degrees, really hot wind. I remember the night before thinking, man, this is weird. I had never experienced it. And sure enough, the next day the whole place caught on fire. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the most dangerous situation for a fire, and of course, that's what we faced here in Oregon in 2020. About 1 million acres burned up, and 3,000 to 4,000 homes were destroyed, and several people lost their lives. God knows how many spotted owls were killed. Maybe all of them. I would like to think all of them, or at least we all hope all of them, so we can get back to managing our forests the way we did in the 20th century, when between 1902 and 2002, we had about 10, 11, maybe 12 large fires. And between 2002 and 2022, we've had 40 mega fires in the state of Oregon.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is we never used to have these mega fires. Yes,
No.
We had fires, and that used to be managed, and the forests used to be. But now these mega fires that is burning so much, and even over in Maui, they had small fires, not like what this is. And I was listening, speaking of Maui, I was listening to a report that their emergency people had actually shut the water off to the west side of the island. They did not, and he actually said, no, we worship water. And so we're not going to be using it. Oh, yeah, this is talk about a screw up, a setup. They had 80 sirens that didn't go off. Oh, no, we can't set those off. They're for tsunamis. People would, people are smarter than that. You got to wake them up and give them a chance.
And it all smells
bad.
It does smell.
It smells fishy.
It does.
Yeah, and so I posted just now a story that the headline is "Sad Sight from Maui Fire," and on the headline it shows people out in the water, and some of them have put a towel or a shirt over, and that's the best thing to do, is to put a wet cloth over that you're breathing through there
Right.
to help stop ash and smoke and whatnot. And it is they're saying that the government is being slammed for blocking supplies like medication, insulin, and it's just the whole thing is a dang mess over there, just an absolute mess. And I watched a video. I don't know, I was on some alternative media, watched a video of a Hawaiian fellow. He says, well, I've come from a meeting with the mayor. And you know what? It was full of developers. All they wanted to talk about was, we're willing to buy your land and whatnot. Sorry, that wasn't an earthquake at my house. I just bumped the thing that my laptop's sitting on. And he said there wasn't talk about helping the people. He says, and it's so sad. He goes, so we've got to take care of ourselves. And it is really sad and very disturbing of what is coming out of Hawaii. And so for people and for those that are in Hawaii, if you haven't figured out, the Democrats don't care about you.
Now here's the silver lining in all this. Hawaii, the bluest of blue, maybe even bluer than Oregon. Hawaiians are finally starting to say, our government stinks. Now, if that happens, if even Hawaiians are possible realizing who's screwing them, I mean, this is one thing to say government incompetence, which is like, why would you say those two words together? They mean the same thing. But you can assume it's government incompetence, but having to wonder if it's on purpose, well, that's next level. But that's where the left, that's where the radical left, that's where the Democratic Party has led us. And for people in Hawaii to start saying these things, maybe the next thing is they actually start voting what they think.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, globally speaking, and I mean globally in the very large 40 or 60,000 foot view, I would, a few years ago, I would scoff at those ideas and those suggestions that the government was involved, or there was some, the water was shut off and the sirens didn't work, so people would be killed, and and all that. But after what's happened the last 3 years,
You have to give it credence. I mean, take a look at the situation in downtown Portland. A lot of people already say this is true. I'm not 100% there yet, but you have to wonder, how is it that, like, what is it? The Four Seasons, I think it is building a property in like the Pearl District, right? Everybody else is fleeing the place, right? Because there's no police and everything's destroyed. Could it be that these people let that destruction happen on purpose to drive down the real estate property so they can come in and swoop it up? And at first I would have thought, no, nobody's that evil.
Oh, yes, they could be.
Well, my lingering question, and I probably wouldn't have entertained this until after the events of the last few years, is I look at all, and I think I mentioned this on the show before, but I look at all the laws and the policy that come out of the state of Oregon, the city of Portland, all of that, things like the sanctuary state, where if you go to court, you're not going to get turned over to ICE if you're a foreign national. The ability to all of the policy and laws now, where it makes it easier to traffic children. Measure 110, where a drug dealer's customer won't get arrested and thrown into jail, but the drugs themselves are still prohibited, which keeps the cost high and the profit margin high. Are the cartels getting their way in the state of Oregon? I mean, it seems like a lot of the policy seems to be tailor-made for organized crime and the cartels in the state of Oregon.
Well, this goes right along with the story that we talked just briefly about it before we came on. That how do you have Portland's police boss working from Vegas and being effective? So Portland has a crime problem, and apparently OPB reports that the director of Community Safety Division does his $208,000 a year public safety job mostly from a gated resort community in Las Vegas, and he's registered to vote in Las Vegas.
Democrat, no doubt.
I would say, yeah, he never would have gotten hired had he been anything but. It would be my guess. And but you know, Portland has got the worst. You know, in 2020, during all of this, when the Antifa and BLM, all the rioting and whatnot, and the defund police movement that happened. In 2020, we witnessed in Portland 99% of their 50 people plus rapid response team police officers resign in a single day and be disbanded. And, you know, so we talk about you know, when you start to add all these things together and connect some dots, you do have to, it does have credence as to what is the plan. And this is crazy. I don't know how this person actually gets hired by Portland.
What's amazing here, you said that Oregon Public Broadcasting did that article?
Yes.
No,
yeah.
That's kind of weird too. So why would the media arm of the radical left, which is any kind of public broadcasting, report that? That's kind of interesting.
Well, the article came, it was the OPB report was about him and his pay and working out of Vegas, but Oregon Catalyst actually, Oregon Watchdog and the Taxpayer Association actually did this article. And, you know, it's hard to fathom that's, to me it is anyway. You know what, if you're going to be in charge of public safety, community safety division, you're going to live in my town.
Yeah, well, I was not trying to get a community either.
I was frozen there for a while, but I'm sure one of you pointed out the fact that it's probably a lot safer to live where he lives than to live in Portland, right?
In his gated community.
Yeah, in a gated community. Man, that's a pretty good gig. $200,000 a year for making phone calls and sending emails, I presume. I mean, what the hell else can you do from home? Well,
he's probably not doing anything. He's probably got another job. I mean, why? How hard can it be? You know, when you work in the state of Oregon, the objective is not to fix anything.
Yeah.
You got a title and you get a paycheck.
Yeah, can you imagine what interview?
Well, there goes David again. So, hey.
Can you imagine what interviews are like either with the state of Oregon or the city of Portland? You know, job interviews. Like, don't you want to know if I'm qualified? Well, no, that's not, you know, of particular concern to us.
No, and in fact, Oregon just fired one of their top qualified economists. This guy's got a PhD. So a top Oregon economist was fired for supporting the Supreme Court decision over the affirmative action programs. So his opinion, he supported that. And this guy is fired, and yet he had the most successful returns on investment for the state of Oregon in the 9 years that he was working as a contractor for the state of Oregon. So this makes no sense, David.
They don't care, do they, Don?
Right. No, they just don't care about that. They don't care about results. Can you imagine like a football coach? What's the coach's name for the Patriots? I can't think of his name.
I don't know.
The old Patriots coach, won all the championships. Anyway, he had like a bad persona, was bad behind the microphone, take people off. But did they fire him? No, because they won like 7 Super Bowls. Right. It's like, you don't care what your opinion is on everything else, right?
Well, and neither should they. But, you know, like we discussed before the start of the show, what's particularly disturbing about this is his firing was most likely instituted by the state. The state is probably who said, hey, we can't have this guy agreeing with the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Like that's some sort of bad thing. And so, you know, they probably called the contractor and said, hey, you know, fire him, you know, get somebody that checks all our woke boxes. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean,
he worked for Echo Northwest, and apparently Echo Northwest today uses the diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI framework in selecting the clients with whom it will work and how it will report and interpret results.
Thank God.
There you go.
And see it's inherently, the crack about all this to me, what's inherently offensive about these people who believe in this DEI and this affirmative action crap is what they're really saying is there are some people based on the way that they look, they just can't compete. It's good to lower the bar for these poor hierarchies, basically, because they just can't compete.
Right.
That's what they're doing. And that's what they're saying. And so someone who would believe that, that's essentially, it's the most racist thinking ever. But that's what they do. And people just,
it is the very definition, Don, what we've been hearing about for years, of institutional racism.
Absolutely.
This is institutionalizing racism. Everything that we're seeing in the public schools, we're seeing, affirmative action. We're seeing Asian students not being allowed in because they're overrepresented because they work their ass off, to be educated and smart. But there's just too many of them. And it's the very definition of the institutional racism all of these institutions claim to be working to eradicate.
Mm-hmm.
I want merit-based. I want production-based. I want results-based.
That's how I get paid. That's how I get paid.
Sure. That's at the end of the day, that's how we're all going to wind up, getting paid. No matter what these fake patch solutions they put into place, they're never going to last. Is just stunning. And this is the thing. If they really were interested in fixing the problem, which is low education amongst minority groups, for example, what is the root cause of that? Well, one of the root causes is the atrocious government schools these kids have to go to. That puts them in that position in the first place. Now try fixing that. That might actually allow them to raise their test scores so they could get in on their own merit. But no, they're never going to do anything like that because that requires hard work.
And government policy has destroyed their families.
Yeah.
Oh, that too.
The Great Society has destroyed poor socioeconomic, brown, black, white, whatever colored people. It's destroyed their families because there's an incentive to be a single mom. Basically, there's a financial incentive there, and so you don't have cohesive family units. And it's just good. I saw somebody. I forget exactly what they said. I think it was on Twitter, but they said something. They equated some bad issue with government. And I thought, man, I've never thought about that, but you are absolutely right. Almost everything. And my son wants to do a podcast like this. His podcast, you tell me what your problem is, and I'll tell you how government caused it.
Milton Friedman, if you watch those old Donahues, you can see this on YouTube from the 70s. Milton Friedman goes through a logic trail very similar to that. But to make a quick statement on that whole thing, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and all my friends and all my neighborhood was black kids. All the kids in my neighborhood were black. So one Japanese, three Japanese kids, and this white kid next door, right? I didn't know anybody who didn't have a dad. But think about the sea change that's happened in like less than 40 or 50 years. I'll repeat. I did not know anybody who didn't have a dad, right?
I didn't either. And my neighborhood was about a third black, about a third Mexican, and a third of us white guys. Yeah, and everybody had a mom and dad.
Yeah, unless something happened, right? Yeah. Like somebody died, I got in a car accident or something, right? It just didn't happen. Now you're looking at, like, in the black community, 80, I have to repeat that so people understand what I'm saying. 80% are born out of wedlock, right?
Yeah.
And in the general population is like 40%. You can't have a change that dramatic happen to a society over a 50-year period and not expect something different to come out of that. And that's what we're seeing.
And you can't have that kind of change without government interference.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not a natural occurrence. It's not a natural anomaly. Human beings are, meant to have cohesive family units. You have to drive those units apart. And government policy is what does that.
Yeah, you can't raise civilized people like that.
No.
Especially boys.
No, you cannot.
They will be savages, and that's precisely what you see. You look at the streets of San Francisco, LA, they got these video cameras, people are walking to the store, just walking out with shopping carts, knocking old ladies in the head.
Yeah.
That just didn't happen. Even the bad people, when I was a kid, they weren't knocking old ladies in the head.
And other people standing there watching it.
Right.
I mean, I remember as a young kid, I'm driving, I think we were in Huntington Park. I'm driving with my father, and he slams on the brakes, like downtown Huntington Park, and he opens the door and he runs over the sidewalk and he grabs somebody and punches the hell out of him. He was a boxer. It was messing with either an old man or an old lady.
Right. Yeah.
That's
what you should do.
That's exactly what you should do.
Right. And the other kids, I remember like 5th or 6th grade, there was a retarded kid at our school. And one kid decided to pick on this retarded kid. 5 or 6 other kids like whooped his, you know what? Because you don't do that.
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't do that. You know, big kids don't whoop on little kids. I mean, you know, the little kid, you know, kind of deserved to be hit, you know. Of course, that's another thing is, you know, you could get your butt kicked and when you and I were in school, Don, but now you know, you can't get that lesson anymore.
Right.
You know, it's a very important lesson for young men to learn that sooner or later you're going to mess with the wrong person, and that lesson should be painful.
Yeah, and it should be early before it costs you anything. You know, you 5th and 6th graders beat each other up, man. By the time you're in 8th and 9th grade, you've worked that out.
Yeah. I remember the first time I got beat up in my front yard. I don't know how old I was, grade school. And I thought, you know what? I didn't like that. And I'm going to make sure that never happens again.
Yeah, it's all taken care of.
Actions have consequences. And this is what we don't have anymore.
Right.
You know, we don't have discipline in school.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we've got to, you know, just talk to little Johnny over here instead of giving him a spanking, because spankings are okay, you know, and discipline is okay. So it's, and everybody gets a trophy. That was part of our discipline.
You keep lowering these academic standards. They never get an adverse result or told they need to improve or change things. Then the first time they got in the real world and have to get a job when they turn 18, that's when they first find out that my 3rd grade reading and writing skills, my inability to pay attention, my ability to not talk when somebody else is talking, all of those basic skills that everybody else got when they were like kids, they didn't get them. And now it's costing them big time.
Yes, it is. And, you know, but it's costing all of us because of the downfall of society. You know, we're all affected by it in one way, shape, or form. There was a local, I just live in a small town, and a local restaurant could not hire people that could actually write a ticket to take an order. So he had to turn to electronics so that they could read the writing, because they couldn't read the writing.
Yeah.
Or printing or whatever of the scribbling of these young people. And it was quite frankly atrocious, because I asked him, I said, how come you've turned to electronics? He says, because we were getting too many mistakes in the kitchen. We can't read the writing.
Yeah.
I just thought, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible.
It is incredible. I've said it before, but I employ a lot of young people, and some of the people they have, I don't know what they did for the first 25 years. They don't know how to do anything. Anything. Yeah. Nothing.
And then they want a job up in the middle or the top of whatever the job is. They want to start at the top instead of, you know what? I mean, I worked my way up, you know, in starting at the bottom and in several things that I did and worked my way up.
Yeah. I overheard a conversation of one of my employees long ago, no longer an employee, but one of my employees talking to another, talking about the slave wages that he was making working for me. He was inside of a greenhouse. He didn't know I could hear him. And I yelled at the greenhouse plastic. I said, slaves don't get paid.
Right. Right. You get fed and housed. You don't get paid.
And you have alternatives.
Yes. And he went on to those.
Right. But, you know, my son, you know, turned beyond to another phenomenon that is in this generation, is they don't work until they're 25. So you got these kids who go their whole lives living on the teat of like little piglets, living on the teat of their mom and dad. they never had a summer job, never had a job in high school, go to college, never get work study, never worked the summers, never do anything. Then they get out of college, 22 years old, 80 grand in debt, and never had a job before. It's like, how does that happen? I mean,
well, it's government policy.
yeah,
It's government policy. We now have. I mean, we we all went to work when we were 12. I'm sure somewhere in there.
Yep,
Right.
13.
everybody.
Yeah, 12, 13. Yeah, we worked every
Everybody knew.
summer.
Yeah.
And I did, and everybody else did in my generation. But you can't do that anymore. It's against the law. It's against the law to hire, I think, anybody under the age of 16 now. And we have other policies like Obamacare, which was a huge debacle, in which I'm really pissed off that congressional Republicans have never repealed it and didn't repeal it when they had the chance. But that one keeps your kids on the insurance till they're 26. So there's this whole thing that I'm not really a grown up until I'm 26 or whatever. And it's like, no, our youngest, I didn't know what was wrong with her. She wouldn't get a job until she was 18.
Yeah.
And then when she got a job, she loved it.
But
Loved working. It's like, boy, you've been missing out on a lot of stuff for the last well, she couldn't work. She could have worked for a couple of years before that, I guess. But it's government policy once again has created an entitled class, and a class that doesn't know how to work, doesn't know how to support themselves, doesn't understand production versus reward, and it's the other countries in the world are passing us by in this respect. I mean, you see the migrant families that we used to pick berries with. Well, maybe you didn't because you're in California, but I moved up when I was 11 or 12. So I picked berries with migrant families. We had migrant families that moved all the way through the West Coast, picked apples, berries, whatever, and then went home and then came back the next year. But all of the family worked, little kids, 7-year-olds,
The
8-year-olds.
whole family.
Yeah. I had a good family unit too. I mean, they probably, I know that homeschooling was a very family inducing thing for us, homeschooling our children, because we didn't turn them over to someone for the majority of their life, the majority of waking hours, and so it made a nice tight family. And my wife mentioned it the other day that she was reading my birth chart.
Maybe you'll unfreeze in a second here.
Yeah, he should.
There he is. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Anyways, she tells me, she says, you have this in your whatever house, and it's a very close relationship with your children. And she said, your children orbit around you. And I thought, I never thought about that, but you're right. I mean, my adult children are around me a lot. Kind of weird, but I think part of that is.
And the reality is that's the way it's supposed to be. But somehow in this modernity, I think we've lost that. This is one of those conclusions I kind of came to. When I was a kid, the grandparents on both sets were around always, all the time. And you need the proximity to that wisdom that only a generation ahead of you can give. And once you destroy all that, you create this island of people who have no one to go to, no one to turn to, no examples. And all things starts to come undone. And I think that's, one of these, I call it lack of multi-generational families like we used to have them. Because we turn all this stuff over to somebody else to raise our kids, basically. And then move all over the country, be completely split apart. You can't be it's hard to be a grandparent from Miami, Florida, right? If you're living in Portland, Oregon. It's just seeing you every Christmas is not quite cutting the mustard. But that's become kind of the norm.
Yeah, because you can in this country. You can't do that in a lot of countries. In a lot of countries, you will share the same domicile, the same property, the same housing for your entire life with all of your other family. But we're such a rich and prosperous nation that we can live wherever the hell we want. And I kind of plan on leaving Oregon, and I'm very certain that I will purchase a place in which all my kids can come live there too.
Right. Well, but you're mindful of what that means, how to structure things so your family still stays in proximity. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be next door. I mean, I get that, but so many times we see people who get to a point where they have nothing to do, with their family. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing.
it's weird. Yeah, it's weird. I don't quite understand it. My family, I grew up in a broken marriage home, so we didn't have a lot of family, and I want a lot of family thing, and I wanted to make sure that was different with my family. I don't think I succeeded to the extent that I wanted to, but I see other people's families, and I go, "What do you mean you haven't talked to your mother in 6 years?" What?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, family is important to be around. It's a great support and the closeness of that. And I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews and my brothers
Mhm.
and cousins and whatnot, even that live up here
Mhm.
long before I moved up here.
Mhm.
And it's nice, but I grew up in a very oriented way. I grew up in a broken home. My mom raised 3 kids by herself,
Mhm.
but and that was okay. But we had family reunions every year.
Yeah, I
And
bet you
so
had.
didn't
Yeah.
get to attend all of those but my grandfather would take one of the grandchildren to the family reunion. So he rotated all 3 of us, taking us to family reunions, and and the reunion moved somewhere else, somewhere in the western part of the United States every year. So not one group of family had to drive the furthest. And
Mhm.
I will tell you, I love that. I love growing up, getting to see all my cousins and my aunts and uncles, and having this huge, and I say huge, my grandfather was one of 9 children.
Mhm.
And so all of their kids and their kids, I have lots of cousins and aunts and uncles, and it was so much, so fun. So
Yeah,
fun when I went. I just look forward to that.
that anchor, I think, is so important. And increasingly, we have a society where people live in a city with millions of people, and then they die of loneliness.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen? I think it's a destruction of the family unit in all of its forms. Um, and being all alone is a bad thing.
It is.
Yes, it is.
That's why God created dogs.
No.
The
They'll never
faithful,
let you down.
the faithful, yeah.
Well, they do, unfortunately. They let you down when they die, but
Yeah,
Well,
it's tough. That is tough.
yeah.
yeah.
All our pets become part of the family, and yeah, it's tough when we lose them. But then again, you know what? We have enjoyed their time, and we always have to think that you have to live life as enjoying what it is,
Yeah,
and staying in the moment.
that is true.
Yeah, I can't make. Of course, I'm not a theologian, and but I can't make a biblical case for dogs in heaven. But I'm hoping.
It was funny. I was talking to somebody earlier today about that. There's certain pets or certain animals. There's a hierarchy there in terms of intelligence too. So, for example, ours is a cat. A cat will climb on your chest and look you. I mean, like stare into your eye. Dogs do this too. It's like, you know, there's a certain intelligence there when you can look at when and they're interested in looking in your eye. And some of them you look at them the wrong way, and that it's not right, and that makes them either unhappy or angry, right? So there's something there. I'm not a
Yeah,
theologian either, but I think there's something there more than
I got one staring at me right now.
yeah, right.
It was the stray that came after my 2-year-old dog died.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't make the case, but I hope for it. I don't know. I actually thought I was having a conversation with myself the other day. I was thinking, I need to go. I saw a woman who was a hospice nurse, and
Hmm.
she had written a book or a blog about all of the things that she encounters when people are dying. And she said it was incredible. The things people saw and
Hmm.
said, and all this stuff. And I thought, I need to go find that book and read it. Anybody say anything about dogs?
Yeah, that's interesting. That would be an interesting book to read. To having that insight, that's actually would be that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I personally never met or do I know of any person who has died, and I know a few of them that have and have been resuscitated, that don't now believe in God.
Right. Right.
Oh, there's tons of literature on that.
Yes.
In fact,
Yeah.
that these people experience that there's something outside of space and time. I mean, whether it be they're
Yeah.
able to pass through walls, they're able to go across the country and hear a conversation, and the evidence is after they come back, yes, that conversation did get had. It's crazy.
Right. But you know, the one thing I thought about that when I was discussing it, I thought to myself, so are you telling me that people that die and are resuscitated, are you telling me that none of those people went to hell?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly how that works. You know, maybe
Yeah.
you know you die and you know, and they go, well, yeah, you know, Dave, you didn't make it. You know,
Yeah.
so head on down this corridor, and then and then you're resuscitated, and then of course you know now you repent and change your ways.
Yeah. I've seen a couple, at least for whatever credibility this is worth. I've seen a couple of YouTubes where people went to the other side, and it was like not pretty. This is what's in store for you.
That's what I was wondering. That's what I
Yeah.
was wondering.
Oh yeah, no,
So
I've
that does
seen
happen.
several of those. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, I feel better now because I have long since I was born again at the age of 33. I have long considered that there was two places to go, and
Mhm.
one of them I didn't want to go to. So apparently, people do get a glimpse of that and go, "Woohoo!"
Yeah.
They still have a chance to change their ways.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you have to think to yourself just logically, if there's justice, you have to have both.
Mhm.
Right.
If there's good, there must be bad.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're certainly covering some philosophical, deep discussions tonight.
That kind of left the world of the political, didn't it?
It's
Yeah.
okay with me. Politics is evil.
Right, right.
Oh, I'll tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you think about it, at bottom, it's all a moral question. I mean, I got into this discussion with one of my sales reps years ago around law and morality, and the whole basis of the discussion was, well, religion should have its place in the public square. And my argument to that was, well, religion's reality, rather, religion's based on morality, and all law is based on morality. Therefore, all law comes from, at the end of the day, it comes from religion.
Sure.
So that has to be what's, you know, what we put in laws, what we've decided, the moral code that we've decided to enforce with laws, what that is. So we don't enforce cheating on your wife, for example, right? But we do enforce stealing from the store. Now you got to wonder about where our priorities are there.
Well,
Right.
adultery used to be a felony in almost every state.
Uh,
So there's that.
Yeah.
And in some countries, it's a death penalty.
Yeah.
Are we better off since we changed that law, by the way?
I don't know, but it was, I forget who said it, but one of our founding, I don't know if it was a founding father, but somebody who was writing at the time of our founding said that the Constitution, which guides our country, established our country, and unfortunately has abandoned our country, or our country has abandoned the Constitution, said that it was meant specifically for a moral and religious people, and is wholly inadequate for anything less.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was John Adams. I think it was.
Was it? Yeah, I just saw it recently. And I forget who said what. But
yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
it is very important, and you know, I think it's clear when you see the relatively scarcity of the Constitution. It was not very specific. It had some, you know, some very overarching principles that moral and religious people could grasp easily. You know, and unfortunately, we're no longer. I don't think we're really much of a moral and religious people anymore, and so we need all of these laws. You know, like don't beat your dog. I mean, you know, all these moral and religious people. You know, don't kill your neighbor. You know, don't steal stuff. Don't loot the Nordstroms. You know.
But you know, and I had this incident happen today. You guys just made me think of this thing. It just happened to me today. It's one of those kind of profound moments. It's the importance of civility and morality. So I'm in the grocery store, and I don't know what made me stop there. I just felt like I had to get some beef jerky and a Diet Coke. What the heck, right? So I got in the store in line, and there's a guy ahead of me who's having trouble with the computer and the software, his credit card. And usually when you're in that situation, you're like, oh no, I got in the wrong line, right? But I'm really working on myself. Like, that's fine. I'm chill. I got nothing. Hey, I'm not in that big a hurry today. It's like Friday afternoon. I'm just gonna chill, looking at my cell phone, waiting for this guy. And the guy turns to me and he says, "I'm so sorry." He apologizes. "I'm so sorry that I caused this backup in the line." I was like, "Don't worry about it, man. It's no big deal. It's Friday afternoon. It's cool." And after the guy got through all that process, he turns and he says to me, "You know what? That was so nice of you to do that. I'm paying for your stuff." I was like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, that was so cool. I'm so thankful. You took all the stress off of me." And okay, so why am I telling you this story? The importance of two things. Number one, the importance of civility. This is what we just be civil, just relax, right? And then the second part of this is that this country is filled with amazing people. This is like Joe Blow guys. This is just two Joe Blow guys in the grocery store, like me and him, right? And look at what came out of that. And most of the citizens are like that. I just don't run across the stuff that the media tries to portray about everybody hating each other. That's a bunch of baloney. That's the way they think of the population. And that's the way that narrow percentage of people, the ruling elite, that's what they actually believe. But most of us aren't morally destroyed like they are. We're not where we were 40 or 50 years ago, but we're not where they are. And therein lies our hope.
Well said.
Well, you're absolutely right there. You're absolutely right. And because you've shared that, let me share this. So during our fair, I got in a little fender bender. I backed into somebody. As I was backing up, she was pulling in. So it was like a little collision there. No major damage. And I got out of my car and I go, "Oh man," I said, "Didn't you see me backing up?" She goes, "Yeah, I did, but oh, well, sorry." And I said, "Hey, that's okay." I said, "Just send me here's my phone number. I'm going to get my insurance card. You get your insurance card. We'll just, exchange information. There's no screaming. There's no yelling. There's no attitude." And in the end, and she's a much younger gal. And she's at the end, we just texted each other a picture of our stuff, and I wrote down all my information for her and gave it to her because I wasn't going to text that part.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to me, "Thank you so much for your attitude." And I said, "Hey, stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for yours. Have a super day. Sorry it happened," and I went and got my thing and off I went. And that's it. It is about being civil to one another. Shit happens. And, but some people are drama driven. And I am not.
And this is the thing.
So no matter what we do, some people are going to have drama, and I'm not about drama.
But at the end of the day, these are first world. I tell myself all these are first world problems.
No kidding.
They totally are. We just came. A guy came to our church. Short version. He's working with women in Uganda who are forced to be in the sex trade, right? And most of these women have children, and so the children basically get trafficked as well. Think about growing up in a country where that's your circumstance, right? And we're complaining about a fender bender or waiting in line at the grocery store. We need to step back.
Oh yeah.
Or Amazon didn't deliver our package on the day that they said they would.
Right. Our flight 30 minutes late. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we have a cow over. I couldn't get internet service. I love it. A comedian did this whole routine of this. I'm flying across the country, 30,000 feet, 500 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Internet service is slow.
Yeah.
Try telling Lewis and Clark that.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in a third world country.
Yeah.
But
still the best place in the world to live. Yeah,
but from that understanding, you can have an attitude of gratitude. I mean, I tell my kids all the time. Look, you turn on the faucet, water comes out. You don't even worry whether it's going to. We complain because the hot water shower upstairs take longer than the rest of them. Right? That's your complaint. Oh, I have to wait 30 minutes for hot water. 30 seconds rather for hot water.
Yeah.
Really? Most of the world
Yeah.
doesn't have
And you can drink the water. You can turn the tap on anywhere and drink the
and
water
drink the water.
in America.
Yeah. Yeah. We flush our toilets with the finest drinking water in the world.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing, but nobody,
Yeah.
we're not communicating that to this next generation, I think. Whereas
No,
our
we're
parents did this stuff all the time. They
We're not.
reminded us constantly about how good we had it.
I did not know that about America until I traveled the world when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I left by myself and I went and traveled around. And when I got back, I thought, this is the place. Switzerland is close. Switzerland is close, but this is
right. Yeah. It's truly amazing. I mean, I remember going to, they used to have this bike ride. I think they still have it. Ensenada's Rosarito. It was like a 100-mile bike ride or 100-kilometer back in the day, just south of San Diego. You might know this, Sonny, about this ride. And I did that in like 87. That was my first time really out of the country. I mean, I've been to Tijuana before, but right, whatever. And you're riding the bike, and you look over the side and you see like what we would think is a tool shed. And I saw people come out and realize, man, there's people living in that thing. Like a whole family. And that was the first time I ever really saw it up front and personal. No running water, forget about washing machines and dryers and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're living in a tool shed.
hot water. Yeah, or even water that you can drink.
Yeah. And that's not even considered the third world country.
We're very spoiled here.
Yeah.
And when I was out sailing, my husband, he would say, Sonny, America is like Disneyland compared to the rest of the world.
Really?
And that analogy is true. We have in our lives, I remember it was, don't litter. So we trained generations not to litter and throw your garbage out the car window. There's some people that still do it. And we have people from other countries that don't have that lesson, and do that. But we are so fortunate in our country. We've got so much. We're so rich in so many ways and frankly spoiled. We don't have, even our poor are getting a lot of help. There's so many services for them.
There are no poor people
and yet,
in America.
Yeah. And yet in other nations, you get sent to the poor. There's nothing. Yeah. If somebody else, a family member, is not helping them, they don't have anything. Well, if you get put into jail, nobody's there to feed you unless your family comes and feeds you. If you go to the hospital, you have to provide your own sheets and maybe even meals. I've been to those countries. I've seen that. And so my husband, his analogy was right. It's like Disneyland here in America.
Yeah. It's stunning the things we take for granted. Like this guy who was visiting, who was doing this work for this country, this agency. He was saying, if you go in, let's say you're pregnant, you need a blood transfusion during pregnancy or any surgery, right? If you don't provide the blood, you don't get any. So if you don't either have a family member or somebody come bring the blood, or if you don't pay for it on the spot in cash, you just don't get any. You just die, and then they take you off to the morgue, right? I mean, that's how it rolls.
Yeah,
right.
Here, that's inconceivable.
It is inconceivable. It is inconceivable. Yeah, there are not. I've long held that there are no poor people in America, and there's PSAs telling me that 1 out of 7 kids is hungry. Yeah, well, I can't see their freaking ribs, and that's what poor people look like.
Right. Oh, to contrary, we have an obesity problem.
Our poor
Have you
people
had
are
your daily
fat.
dose of sugar?
Our poor people are fat.
Yeah, we have the opposite problem. We're trying to get people to stop eating. So there was another.
Well, I was listening to a show on that about, the welfare system we have promotes obesity by, you can go with your food stamps and get Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah,
every day.
But do you need Coca-Cola? No.
Yeah.
You know what? I grew up not drinking that because we were poor and we couldn't afford it. If I had a A&W root beer or a soda, let me tell you, that was such a treat, such a treat. And
I tell you what, I think this is another one of these things, kind of like the drug industry, the food industry. You got to figure, how do they get themselves on the list so any food can be bought with these federal programs? I don't think that's an accident. When this whole thing first started, you couldn't buy garbage with WIC dollars, for example. Now you can get whatever you
You're
want.
right.
And you go out there buy a bunch of Twinkies, right? I don't think it was like that at the beginning.
No.
And so now you have people who are on this stuff buying food that's quite frankly addictive and really bad for them. So I haven't seen the stats, but you can almost for certain when you see somebody who's like super obese, they're probably quote unquote poor in this country or at the lower end of the economic scale. It just makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Well, it does make you wonder. Yeah.
Greatest
Yeah.
country on the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Yeah, amen to that. And it's objectively obvious too. Otherwise, why would millions be
It
storming?
is objectively obvious. Yeah. It's not hidden. People risk their lives to come here because they know.
Yeah. They're not risking their lives to get out.
No one's risking their lives to
No.
get out, are they? No one's building a raft out of logs and trying to get to Mexico.
Even the left-wing Hollywood types who swear if so-and-so get elected, they're going to leave. They never leave.
No, they never do. Why is that?
No. Nobody ever says that. They say it, but nobody ever follows through.
They never follow through. Canada's waiting for you.
Canada's missing out.
Right.
I mean, if I were Canada, I would
So is
sue.
Mexico.
I would sue over these broken promises. Great show tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, that went by in a hurry, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Yeah, I got a dog over here that's staring at me going, hey, can we go outside?
There you go. Yeah, I think he wants a bone.
All right.
A bone with something on it.
Great show. Thanks, guys, and fabulous Friday.
Thanks so much. You guys have a great weekend. That was really fun doing triple.
Good night, all.
It was.
Good night, everybody.